In this tutorial, we are going to cover how to extract overlapping date ranges between two sets of date ranges with JavaScript. So this came about because I recently had a project where I had to do this, and I had to do it for a large group of date ranges. So I've got a sample date ranges here, and they can be handled more visually with this set of date ranges. So we've got this core range here that we need to compare against. In this example, it is from the 1st of September through to the 16th. And then we have 6 other sample ranges we can see that they fit in. So what we're trying to do programmatically is get this range here. So we've got this range between the 1st here and the 16th for sample 1. So it'll be the 1st of September through to the 16th of September here. And then for our second sample, it's going to fit inside our master range. So the range would then be from the 3rd to the 10th of September. In our third sample, it would be from the 3rd through to the 16th, cutting off 2 days. And then in our fourth sample, it would be from the 1st through to the 10th, cutting off the first 3 days. In the 5th and 6th sample, they don't fit inside the master range, so they are not included. Okay, so we've got an example of the conditions we need to meet over on the right here, and then we're in VS Code to do our coding. So to create a function for this, we need a target range, which is going to require a start date and an end date, and then a current range, which is going to require a start date and end date. And because we have these different conditions that you can see on the right here that we need to meet, we should have enough test conditions to be able to meet those, so we know that our code's running properly. So let's set up our test conditions first. So our first set of test conditions are going to be our dates, of course. So these are the current dates we want to iterate through and check, and they match these ones over here. Okay, and then let's also have a current test condition. So we'll say const target start, and it's going to be equal to, so we've got strings of dates here. So these are written as in day, and then month, and then year. You could do it the American style as well. Or we could do it as the computer nerds do. We'll go 2024. And let's have our start date equaling the 1st of September. So that would be 08. That would be 09, and then 01. And then const target end. Going to be equal to 2024 09, I think it was 0916. Cool. Okay, so to run our test, we're going to iterate over these dates. So let's say dates dot for each date, and we'll add in our little callback function here, and we'll have the parameter date dt for short, little arrow function. And what do we want to do? First, we're going to create a response. So const equals RESP. And that's going to call the function we're about to generate. So that'll be get data range overlaps. And I've built it somewhere else in our sample. That's why it's appearing here. But its current start will be a string. And that's going to be, as it iterates through these dates, it's going to be the first value of this array. So we'll say dt is 0. And then dt 1 as our end current period. And then for our target start is just going to be tgt start and tgt end. And just so we don't put global variables into our function, we'll just put a tgt start, put a g for global at the end, eh? There we go. And I'll do the same here, g and end. That's better. Okay, so once we get the responses back from the function we're about to create, well, let's just give it a console log. So it'll be console.log, and we want to log the sample range. And that's going to be the date, so dt. So it's going to be each one of these as we iterate through. We already know this is going to be the standard one, so that's fine. And then we want the number of days overlapping. So let's put that on a new line and say overlap range. And that will be our response. We might play around with this test in a minute, but let's go ahead and make our function now. So our function is going to be the get data range overlaps. And that's going to take a current start date and a current end date, and then also a target start and target end. Nice. Hit save. And let's just put in some JS documentation so we know what we're building here. The current start is going to be a string. Well, it's all going to be a string, right? So let's just grab that. Control C, Control V, Control V. And what's our title? It returns the date range overlaps between two sets of text-based date ranges. And so we've got returns. It's going to return the date as an array or null. All right, so if we're returning a date as an array or null, that's going to give us a pretty gnarly looking date here. Let's make a bit of a change to our test. So let's go up and we'll say date response, date response is equal to, and then if we do have a return response, then we want to return each of the responses as a date string, right? So we'll say response dot map date, little arrow function here. So we'll map each time we iterate through the array, and it'll just be array of two values, a start and end value. We want to set the date to date string. There we go. Or if it's null, we want to say no matches. All right, back to our function. The first thing we need to do is transform these strings of dates into a JavaScript date. So to do that, we just need to say current start is equal to new date current start. Okay, so we're just overriding these. If you're uncomfortable with that, rename it to your own variable. Then we want to do the same different times here. Then we've got current end, Control C. Select the next one, Control D, Control V, and we'll do the same again. Control C, double click, Control D, Control V, and last again, Control C, Control D, Control V. Cool. So now, once we have our date strings as a JavaScript date, we're going to convert them into milliseconds so we can make our comparisons. So let's turn these into epochs. So epochs means it's time in milliseconds since the 1st of January 1970. So we'll say const. So start epoch is equal to current start dot get time. Cool. And let's just set down 2, 3, 4. And we'll change this one. So current end, target start, and target end. Nice. Okay. All right, we can do a little test. We can say console log. We'll just check this one out. And let's do the end as well. And it's going to throw an error here, but that's cool. Let's go into debug. Okay, so we've got our current start epoch and end epoch. Then we've got the date samples here that is console logged up here. We've got response here. We should probably update that. Control C, Control V. There we go. It's not going to make a difference to us at the moment though. All I'll say is no matches. Let's put a colon in there too, make it priority. And I think we're good to go to move on. So let's move on with our conditions. So the first condition we can do is probably going to make this function faster, is to determine if the current iteration of the sample date is not going to match the target date at all. So it's going to sit outside the boundaries. Because once we have that, it doesn't have to go through and check each one of these. So once we have that, if we find it's outside the boundaries, we can finish the script, return null, and we're done. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's get rid of that console log. We're going to create an if statement. So we'll say if the current start epoch is greater than the target end epoch. So if the current start epoch, so it's the start here, is greater than the current end epoch, which is here, so these two locations, then there's going to be no match. So, or with or pipes, the current end epoch or epoch is less than the target start epoch. So in that case, if the current end epoch, so this bit here, is less than the current start epoch, then we don't want to do anything either. So how do we display that? We are going to return null. Cool, so that's our first condition done. All right, what's our next condition? In this example, we got to say if the current date just matches within the target range. So here we say, so that would mean if the current start epoch is greater than the target start epoch and the current end epoch is less than the target end epoch, so it fits inside, then what do we want to return? So we just want to return, we're returning an array, but we're going to return whatever's inside. So that'll be this one. So it'll be the current range here. So it would be the current start and current end, right? So car start and car end. Cool. All right, so that's our first condition. That's our next condition done. So what about in this case where the current date encompasses the target range? Okay, so in this case, so if the current start epoch is less than, in this case, we'll put equal to as well. So just in case it is exactly the same, right? So if it's less than or equal to, and we could probably do the same up here as well. The target start epoch and the current end epoch is now greater than, so exceeds beyond the target end epoch, then what are we going to return? Well, we're going to return just the target, right? Target, start, and the target end. Nice. Okay. Our next condition. So our next condition is when we want to get the range, this range here. So it's going to be from the target start to the end of the current range. And that will be our range, this one here. So our condition then would be if the current start epoch is less than or equal to the target start epoch and the current end epoch is also less than or equal to the target end epoch, then we want to return, in this case, we want to return the target start and the current end. So return the target start and the current end. Cool. All right, so last condition, I'm just going to grab this and Control-Alt-Shift down and make some changes. Okay, so our last condition is going to be the opposite, right? So when our current starts somewhere within the target and ends somewhere outside the target. So we want to then grab this range here. So if our current start epoch is greater than or equal to our start epoch and the current end epoch is also greater than the target end epoch, then we want to swap these around. So this time it'll be the current start and the target end. Done. I think that gets everything now. All right, let's see how that goes. We hit save, hit F5 and run. No errors, cool. Let's see if we're correct here. So our first sample is the 29th of August to the 18th of September. So that is this one here, and that should get us through the 1st through to the 16th. So the overlap range returns the 1st through to the 16th, correct? What about in this example here? So it's the 3rd of September through to the 10th. So that should give us the 3rd of September through to the 10th. So it's this one, this example here, and that's correct. Okay, then in our next example, we have from the 3rd of September through to the 18th. So there's an overlap at the end through to the 18th. So that should just keep it from the 3rd of September through to the 16th, correct? 29th of August. So back here, it starts through to the 10th of September. We should get returned 1st of September to the 10th. So 29th August, 10th, September 1st, through to September 10th. Brilliant. All right, and then we've got our last two ranges, which don't match or don't fit inside our target range. So they should say no match, which is exactly what we got. Good stuff. So in this tutorial, we learned how to extract overlapping date ranges between two ranges of dates in JavaScript and excluding any dates that don't have an overlap. I found this useful when creating analytical data for date ranges, say when there's certain jobs on for contractors for clients, and I need to get those date ranges or values that correspond to those date ranges of when a job is on and when it is not. But I'd also be interested to see how you would use it in your own project. In our next tutorial, we're going to learn how to get the end date from a start date and a number of work days using JavaScript. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more tutorials like this, subscribe. Until next time.